All right, this is Rabbi Tobin. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Today is the 13th of May, and we are in the Schottenstein on Tractate Sanhedrin, Chapter 3, page 29b2. All right, so here's what happened. So in the last couple of days, we've been dealing with this Mishnah about how do you inspect witnesses, and that quickly morphed over to a certain scenario of are witnesses kosher witnesses or not? And there were a couple of discussions that worked around the basic scenario that Reuven and Shimon, I'll make them up that they have names so they're more identifiable. Reuven and Shimon have a financial deal. Let's call it a loan. And Reuven says to Shimon, you owe me 100. And Shimon says, sure. Or yeah. Or okay. And there are witnesses who hear it. And the next day, Reuven tries to force the court to make Shimon pay him the 100, and he brings the witnesses in. And Shimon says, I was just kidding. The court believes Shimon, and he does not have to pay. Anyone want to tell me why the court believed Shimon and he did not have to pay?
Well, what about the witnesses?
What about the witnesses?
The witnesses weren't told that they were officially witnesses. It has to be announced ahead of time.
Okay, so one of the principles is he has to tell the witnesses, you are my witnesses for this deal. The other piece of the case that came up in one of the discussions was Reuven said to Shimon in front of his witnesses, you owe me 100, and Shimon said yes. And then Reuven revealed the witnesses and said, would you mind repeating that in front of the witnesses? And Shimon says, no, because I don't want you to take me to court. Now, he didn't say I don't owe you, but he said I don't want the hassle of making this a big deal, a big legal thing. Like, I'm going to pay you, but I don't want you to drag me into court one day. Might be in his mind, or he might be kidding. We don't know. But he doesn't want to do the formality in front of the witnesses. And then there was this argument about whether or not a person would ever lie about how much money he owes, inflating the amount that he owes. And contrary to our first impression of human behavior, where everyone always shows off and pretends that they're, multi-billionaires, when in fact they've declared bankruptcy many times in recent history. For example, there are people who, you think people always inflate their net worth, but the truth of the matter is people might lie to deflate their net worth. And what might be such a scenario where I'm going to lie and I'm going to make it sound like I'm really on hard times when in fact I'm not? Anyone got a scenario for that?
I'm afraid someone will ask them for a loan.
All right, so I don't want people to be bothering me about my money all the time.
You want to decrease your synagogue dues.
I want to get financial aid and consideration. Like I applied, when people fill out financial aid work for their kids going to college, nobody says I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Right? I got lots of money in the bank. Please give me financial aid. I've got medical expenses up to here. I've got a loan. My business is failing. Everything you can throw in there to show how poor and destitute you are to try and get consideration. The Gemara didn't use that example. The Gemara used an example of a man who has a reputation as a miser and wanted to get rid of that reputation. One way to do that is to say I'm very poor. The other way to do that is to say I loan people money all the time. Right? That kind of a thing. So whether or not there are loans or not is something someone might lie about, no matter which side of it they're on, to try and change their reputation. And then they finished, the last thing we read at last week's class at the very end was that there's a principle that a man might do that about himself, but he wouldn't do that about his children. You wouldn't lie to change your children's reputation or to make them seem inferior or poor or destitute or anything like that. So now we are into, I'm not saying that works, it doesn't work, it's just what they said. Now we are going to get into the question of witnessing, okay? What the witnesses are doing, how they are witnessing, what they are witnessing. And the real question is going to be around a thing called an admission document. where the witnesses have heard a man admit that he has a debt, and then they want to write a written receipt with their names on it as witnesses that they have admitted this debt. Why would that happen? Who wants that to happen? What does it do? What does it save you from? Okay, so Reuven and Shimon in one scenario are, Shimon is admitting in front of witnesses, I owe you 100 gold coins. The witnesses then write it down. Reuven admitted in front of us that he owes, Shimon admitted in front of us that he owes Reuven 100 coins, and the two kosher witnesses sign. What have you gained from that? Yeah.
Memory failure?
Okay, the witnesses die. The receipt lives on. What else?
Witnesses might marry into the family, so they're non-kosher.
Right, that's correct. At the time they're being asked to testify later on, they might have become unfit witnesses to testify regarding these people. Very good. And the document was signed at the proper time. Okay, what else?
I mean, it sounds like it's almost like a notarized document.
Yes. So it carries its own weight of proof. Now, in the Torah, two witnesses is the highest level of proof. So notarizing by two witnesses doesn't really add any
So it's the
more
minimum.
credibility.
It's the minimum and maximum.
The who?
Minimum.
It's the minimum and maximum, yes. The other thing that happens is you don't have to bother the witnesses again.
Right.
Right? Like, oh, God, you're going to make me a witness on your thing? You do this to me all the time, and then you have to go to court, and every time you go to court, I've got to show up, and then, really?
I lose money.
Right, I lose money, I lose time, I got all these people who are mad at me because now I've testified against them in court. Can't we just write it down? And then the receipt goes to whom?
To the one who was bringing the suit.
So it goes to Reuven, it goes to the creditor. So Shimon admits in front of witnesses, the witnesses want to write it down, and they want to give this document of admission to the creditor, okay, to the guy who loaned the money, the guy who wants to collect the money eventually. Seems like a really neat system, right? What could possibly be wrong with that? Dun, dun, dun. All right, so now we get into today's topic. And there's a number of different ways this is going to get handled. It's going to get enlarged. It's going to get changed. We're going to play around with it. Okay, so 29b-2. The Gemara introduces a new topic, a discussion of when the witnesses to a proper admission are empowered to record the admission in a note on behalf of the creditor. Okay? Gemara. Hod bifnei shnayim v'kanu miyado. So here's the scenario. Shimon admitted in front of two witnesses, whatever his debt was, v'kanu miyado, and he did a kinyan with his hand. A kinyan means to acquire. So if you've ever sold your chametz with me personally in the chapel, I may have had a cloth or something in my hand, asked you to make the declaration of your sale, appointing me as the agent of your sale, so forth, and then had you pull the cloth. That's a kinyan. Same thing at a wedding, when they read the ketubah and all the terms of the ketubah, and you turn to the groom and you say, if you wish to acquire the terms of the ketubah, please pull on this cloth. And the groom pulls the cloth,
But
right?
not like a handshake.
The cloth in the hand. And that is a Talmudic manner of acquiring terms of an obligation or a debt. It's like a handshake. It's like, giving scouts honor. It's just a solemn act that you wouldn't normally do that is clearly indicating that you are acquiring the terms of that contract or that debt. Doing a kinyan is the Talmudic, the rabbinic, the classical Jewish way of acquiring a financial obligation.
Does that come anything from having something between a man and a woman and not touching?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Is that like the Japanese used to do with a handshake deal, no lawyers?
It's a handshake deal, but here it's in front of witnesses.
Right.
Right? So I would say it's more like with lawyers. Right? So if you don't do a kinyan, it's more like just on my honor. If you do a kinyan, It means you did the legal act that shows you are intentionally, formally acquiring this in a very solemn way, right? So if I lend, Ron, $100, I say, Ron, here's $100, right? It's good. It's a gentleman's loan. Pay me back when you can. I do that in front of witnesses.
Oh, okay.
Can the witnesses write down that Ron owes me 100?
Sure.
That's the question. Okay. Now, if I say, Ron, you owe me 100, right? I'm giving you this, and in front of the witnesses, I want you to swear on your life that you will pay me back. Is that a higher level of him acknowledging the debt? Is it more serious? Maybe. I want you to write me a note that says I borrowed 100 from you at this time. That would be an even higher level of lower trust, higher level of enforceability. So in the Talmud, using the kinyan is the higher level of enforceability, lower level of trust. It looks like it really was a business deal. It wasn't just something between friends. I was a nice guy. It was casual. I really thought I'd get it back. I didn't think I'd get it back. If you do the kinyan, it indicates that this is a formal, legal business deal.
Without witnesses? I mean, you can do
Always
it.
with witnesses.
Oh,
There's
with
no
what?
point in doing a kinyan without witnesses.
Oh.
Did they use collateral for any of these loans and put it into the written contract?
There are things that are left as collateral against debts. That is a known system in the Talmud. It's more in the Bava Metzia, Bava Batra.
You leaving your jacket over with them,
Yeah, the classic biblical case is that you hold his coat, his cloak, as a pledge against his labor or whatever.
But then you have to give it back.
You have to get, and the biblical command is that you have to give it back. But yes, there's an elaborate Talmudic system of things that are held in what you would call escrow, things that are held as deposits against other things. Yes.
Yes, and you're very generous. He owed you $1 million last week.
That's what I was thinking.
Well, when I say you owe me $1 million and he says sure, the likelihood of the witnesses believing the whole thing is very low. If I say you owe me $10 and he says sure, the likelihood of the witnesses believing him are real. He might be joking either way, but the witnesses, based on the plausibility of the scenario, might think it's more or less. So the question now, the other scenario, which we don't have, this is a new scenario, is the witnesses are alone with Ron and I'm not there, and he admits in front of them that he owes me 100. Right? It's just as effective, but there's no kinyan because I'm not there to pull on the handkerchief with him. So he admits to the witnesses, sure, I owe Rabbi Tobin 100. And they want to write it down, sign it. Ron admitted to us that he owes you 100, and then to give it to me so that I can have it, and then I can take it to court and enforce it.
So I'm
right?
gonna be a troublemaker.
Yep.
So what if it turns out that he really owes you 1,000? But he's admitting that he's only owing you 100.
Well, it's only the 100 that we have any testimony for.
Okay.
So when we have you take our chametz and we
Right.
do the kinyan, we don't deal with witnesses. Or are we just saying people around us are the witnesses? in the
So
deal?
what happens formally when we do the sale of chametz is you actually give me a harsha'ah. The document you're filling out does not sell your chametz. The
Right.
document you're filling
agent.
out is appointing me as your chametz agent on the chametz commodities market.
Right.
I'm able to sell your chametz and all related things and so forth. So when I actually do the sale, I do it in front of witnesses with a kinyan.
Okay.
So I had Father Brian from St. Anthony's down here, the Roman Catholic Church by the Armory, come in here, and in front of 2 kosher Jewish witnesses, he purchased the list. I gave him everybody's names and where they lived and where the chametz is. We put an evaluation on it, and he paid me $1, and he pulled on the cloth, and the witnesses signed on a document that I prepared that he had done this, and in front of them on this day he had acquired the chametz. So that's all, yeah, that's done. It doesn't have to be done in front of witnesses for it to be a kosher sale. I've done it without witnesses sometimes in the past. But if you can arrange it to do it with witnesses, it's the highest level of proof.
You said you had to notify the witnesses that they were witnesses.
Yes, I brought the witnesses in and I said, would you two be willing to be witnesses for the sale of chametz? And they said, sure. And I said, great.
Love
And then-
to.
What's that?
I'd
Yeah.
love to.
Love to, why not? I had to explain to the father what was going on.
Do they have
He was very
anything like
puzzled.
that kind of a tug on a piece of material?
I don't think so.
When we do the assignment of people to deliver a get, we're having 3
Okay.
sign instead
So,
of 2.
so we're gonna get into that. When Rabbi Yasakov comes to Minyan and he's doing, get deliveries,
Yeah.
and he grabs 3 observant men, and you're proven to be observant men because you're in Minyan with talis and tefillin at 7 in the morning, that's pretty darn good. So he pulls you aside and he says in his language, he says, I convene you as a Beit Din of 3 who are sitting here today for the purpose of, and and then what he does is he appoints an agent for the delivery of the get that he has written. So the husband has appointed him to deliver the get, but the wife lives in California. So the rabbi has identified another rabbi in California who he is going to appoint as an agent of the agent to deliver the get to the wife, and you guys actually are not witnesses. You're a Beit Din. You're judges.
So, I mean, in a way, we're both.
And
aren't
she
we?
has to
We're not
accept
both?
it? I
No.
thought she has to
I
untie
was
a
thought we were
shoe.
supposed to
No, that's a
witness
whole
and-
different thing.
And a shofet,
You're not witnesses. You're a Beit Din.
What if a woman comes to services in the morning?
That would be up to Rabbi Yasakov if he wants to use her as a witness.
Yeah.
You have to ask Rabbi
Just
Yasakov.
Just asking.
He wants it.
I accept. I use women as witnesses.
Oh,
He
yeah.
likes to keep it, I think, at a
That's
higher level,
legitimate?
So it won't be, but it's not the get itself, it's the delivery of the get in a sense. I think the get itself, they don't.
I can't answer or comment.
Okay. Okay, all I can say is though, we've never had a woman, when we've done it with them.
Yeah.
We've done it.
Well, I
Many
said 3
times.
observant men because that's what
Well,
I've
she
seen
has to
the
accept the
practice
get,
to be.
correct?
She does
No,
have
no.
to accept the
Yeah,
get,
yeah,
yes.
And what if she doesn't accept it?
Then the Beit Din has to be convened to accept the get on her behalf because nobody would reject a get if they really understood what it was because it's only to her advantage. It's not in no way to her disadvantage. So they accept it on her behalf and they send her a note that the get has been received on her behalf. And if she ever wants it, here it is. But in the meantime, she's free to marry.
Oh, that she's free to marry.
And does someone go explain to her?
The letter explains that to her.
Explain to her how it's in her advantage?
Well, when she refused, it was in the conversation where it was being explained to
Okay.
her. We'd like to deliver your get, so you'll be divorced Jewishly. She says, you and him and the world and rabbis. And we go,
Okay.
we'll accept it on your behalf. And she says, you can do whatever you want to do. And I say, okay, okay.
But if she
And then we
re-
send her a letter, and sometimes she sends us back with another series of hellos on it.
Yeah, but what if she refuses? She's free to marry, but what about
Why?
him? Is he free to marry?
Oh, yeah, we tell him that we received it on her behalf, and he's free to marry as well.
Oh, he's free
He
to
can
marry.
do multiple marriages anyways. In biblical law, men can marry multiple wives. So if for some reason she is completely unwilling or unable, there's some reason she can't receive it, and we can't receive it on her behalf, but it's otherwise, this man should really be divorced, and we're doing everything we can. There's another system where you can free him from the rule of Rabbeinu Gershom in the 11th century that prohibited polygamy in Ashkenazi communities. We free him from that rule so he can marry a second wife.
In
And he can,
2019?
sure, 17, 18, 19, next year. Yeah, because he's not really living with, divorced of her civilly, and there's something going on stopping
Yeah,
the,
I got you.
right?
Yeah. Yep, I
So,
got you.
I mean, let's say she's in an insane asylum.
I understand.
She's not mentally competent to receive the get.
Yeah.
And we can't really guarantee that it's to her benefit to be divorced because maybe in that case, abandonment of her in an insane asylum is not to her benefit.
Right, he's
So,
supporting her.
so we're not going to accept a get on her behalf.
Yeah.
So instead, we're going to free him to marry a second wife, which leaves him with the obligations of supporting her Jewishly.
So he still has to
So he
support-
gets to have happiness still. I mean, what if
Yeah,
they're
but
30
he
years
still
old when
has
this
to
happens?
support her.
Yeah,
But you wouldn't be.
Jewishly.
You usually don't give a get until it's first civilly. It's usually
Yeah,
get
so
after-
civilly,
it's
so
civilly already
she's in the
divorced.
asylum, and civilly he's divorced of her.
Right.
Jewishly,
Jewish, I see what you're saying.
she's not in a position to accept on her own behalf,
Right, 'cause she's not-
and we can't really say it's for her benefit that we accept on her behalf, so
not
we
mentally
can't
competent.
accept on her behalf.
Mm.
It's not that she's not competent, it's that she would be abandoned in that situation with no
Mentally
means of
competent,
support.
That's what I'm saying. She wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to support herself.
Correct, right? I mean, if you made an argument that she's got a $200 million trust fund that's supporting her in that position, then we could say, okay, and you're also free. I mean, we might do that, but you have to look at the cases. Okay, for witnessing though, it's a good question, Ron. Do 3 witnesses ever improve the case over 2 witnesses?
No.
And in the Bible, it says, "On al pi shnayim yakum davar," on the basis of 2, something is established. So we're going to get exactly into that case. So here we go. Someone admits in the presence of 2 and performs a kinyan. Kotvim, they write, meaning they write a document, a receipt of this that can be enforced in the court. Ve'im lav, and if he didn't do the kinyan with the cloth, ein kotvim, they may not write. Okay, so if Ron and I are both present when the loan happens or the admission of the debt happens, and we pull on the handkerchief together, then they're going to see that and they're going to be able to write a witness and document and hand it to me that he admitted the debt. Even if all of that happened, if we didn't do the kinyan, they are not allowed to write that document.
No
Okay.
opinion, no document.
No kinyan, no document in front of 2 witnesses. Now, bifnei shlosha v'lo kanem miyado, if there are 3 witnesses and he didn't do the kinyan, Rav Amar kotvin. Okay, Rav says because there's 3 witnesses, they can write a receipt. V'Rav Asi Amar ein kotvin, but Rav Asi says with 3 witnesses without a kinyan, you can't. So there seems to be a principle here where Rav says a 3rd witness is as effective as a kinyan as far as their ability to write this document. The Hava Uvda, now we're going to get a case that once happened. Once upon a time it happened. The Chashla Rav lehad Rav Asi, and Rav actually ruled in a consideration of Rav Ashi and didn't let them do it, write the thing. So that's weird. So we've got a teaching that's a machloket, an argument between Rav and Asti, where Rav says 3 can write it, Asti says they can't. And then we have, however, an incident once where a case existed in front of Rav and he didn't let them do it, contrary to his own teaching. So now we have to try and figure that out. That's what the Gemara is doing. So,
But it does say here, when you said, without the kinyan, but if the debtor agrees, then the 2 witnesses are accepted.
okay, you're reading the commentary that's embedded
Yeah,
in the
no.
translation?
No, it says, back on the bottom of 29b2,
Remember, the bold print words are the only ones that are translations.
Oh.
The non-bold print words
It's a-
are the commentary that has been inserted by the Schottenstein.
oh, okay.
So the only words we have are in the presence of 3 and did not perform kinyan. Rav said they write, and Rav Asi said they don't write. There was a case, and it was considered for him to Rav like Rav Asi. That's all we've got in words. The rest is filling it in with commentary by the guys who have already gone through the rest of the Gemara and put in all the necessary information at this point to help make it easier for you.
So just read bold.
It's a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. That's what the commentary here is. Okay, so we don't really know all that yet, and let's go through the rest of it. So the Gemara now cites varying opinions regarding when a group of 3 witnesses to an admission of a debt is authorized to record the admission when no kinyan is performed. Okay, so that's what we're playing with. Here we go. Amar Rav Ada bar Ahava. Rav Ada bar Ahava said, Ha-odita, the name of this document is a note of admitting. Zimnim katvinen v'zimnin lo katvinen. Sometimes we write and sometimes we don't write. Knife v'yatve le katvinen. If they gathered and were sitting, then kinfe v'yatve lo katvinen. If they were gathered and sitting, we do not write. Knafinhu ihu katvinen. But if he gathered them to himself, they may write. In other words, the guy who's making the admitting walks into a room, let's say he expects to find 2 witnesses and no Kenyan. And in that environment, he's planning on admitting. They would not normally be able to write the document. Lo and behold, that day when he walks into the notary public's office, there are 3 kosher notaries there ready to be witnesses for him. And he makes the admission, they can write it down. According to this teaching we just read, they still can't. Because they were there before he got there, and you can't say that he was expecting them. So maybe he didn't want to do it in front of the 3 of them or something like that. They don't have any additional power over the situation to write the receipt. But if he walked in and there was none or 1 or 2, and he brought the 3rd one in, then they can write the receipt.
Because that shows intention.
It's his intention to bring the 3 together for the purpose of the receipt. Now, at this point, I stop and go, why all the rigmarole? Why doesn't he just keep the 2 and do a Kenyan so they can write the receipt anyways? And
Does he know what they've discussed before he enters?
it doesn't matter. He walks in and he says, I want you to witness that I owe Rabbi Tobin 100.
Right.
If there's 3 of them there, when he gets there, they can't write a receipt. If there's not, and he brings 3 together, he says, I'm bringing you 3 together, and I admit to the 3 of you that I owe Rabbi Tobin a receipt, then they can write a receipt. I mean, owe 100, then they can write a receipt. That's
Now,
the difference. It doesn't
if
matter
they-
what they were doing before he got
If they
there.
don't write a receipt, do they have to appear personally?
So then to enforce it, you would have to bring those witnesses to the court to show that the money is owed and the money is collected. So why would he bring 3 in to have a receipt written? Because the creditor's not there. If the creditor's there, you do 2 in a Kenyan and you get your receipt. But if the creditor's not there and you want the receipt, you need to bring a 3rd person in. That's what
So
this
who
is
does he
saying.
do the Kenyan with?
There's no Kenyan.
Oh, there's no.
Because that's why you have the 3rd witness. According to the view of the people who say a 3rd witness allows you to do this. Other people say a 3rd witness doesn't allow you to do this, so there's no advantage to it.
I could see this being a situation if someone bought property,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden, he finds out that there's oil on his property. And so he only spent $10,000, but now he knows it's worth
So
$100,000. It's to his advantage to
Yeah.
make sure he gets the debts.
I like the way you're thinking, but I have to remind you that in the Talmud, there are 3 categories of property, and the laws regarding them are sometimes different. There's money, there's stuff, and there's land.
Okay, land is different.
Those are 3 different things. Money is money.
Painting,
No. That's stuff.
that's stuff. Okay.
A painting is in the category of stuff.
Okay. So
Stuff is stuff. Anything is metaltalene. It's stuff. Okay? Hello. We have a chair for you. Welcome. You're very welcome. Okay. So, and karka is land. Okay? So the rules might be different. Just
So this is just money.
keep it in mind for another page, because those 3 categories are coming up on this topic.
And it is very helpful.
Okay, now Rava Amar. So we had Rav Ada bar Ava say that if the 3 were there before he got there, they can't do the receipt. But if he gathered the 3 together, they can do the receipt. Rava says, "Afilu kinfin hui hulo katvinen." Even if he gathered them himself, he still can't get the receipt out of them. Ad amar lahu havu alai dayane. Unless he says to them, "You shall be my dayanim, my judges." So he's not gathering them as witnesses, he's gathering them as judges. But that's why I made the distinction earlier. Rabbi Yaskov is not gathering the 3 of you as witnesses, he's gathering you as a beit din. He's making the 3 of you judges.
It's like when someone converts.
Right, when you convert, you have 3 rabbis who form a beit din to examine you and approve of your reasons and knowledge and so forth. All right, so Ravina says it's not 3 witnesses. He agrees that you have to gather them, but they have to, well, actually he doesn't say that. He says even if you gather them, they're not kosher unless they are judges, unless you make them judges. Okay, that begs the question, can I do this? Can I just gather 3 people out of Minyan or out of the falafel stand and make a beit din? Doesn't that undermine the whole concept of Beit Din?
Right, because
They-
each one has to appoint a judge.
Knowledgeable.
Well, you have the one picks and the one picks and they pick the
Right.
third. Okay, that whole thing does not exist in this conversation. But I'm talking about the quality of the people. What if I go to a bar and I pick out 3 people and I say you're a Beit Din?
And they're half drunk.
I was about to say that.
Well, they're just lowlifes,
That's why I have to go come-
right? I
Well,
mean,
you don't know.
I go to a really tough, bad bar. I'm looking at people and like you could keep a dentist in business for life with just the people in that bar. Okay? Can I make a Beit Din out of them? Is this really something you can do? And let's see. Mar bar Rav Ashi Amar, so Mar, the son of Rav Ashi, said, Afilu Amar Havo Alai Dayane, even if he said, be judges over me, La Katvinen, they still can't write it. Ad dekava educhta, unless they had established a real court, a seat, a place of justice. Ushalche umizamne le levedina, and they'd sent word out to the town, to the populace, that this is a court will now be in session. Okay? So in other words, you can't just walk up to the 3 guys at the end of the bar and say, Beit Din, I need an uvta. I need you to fill out this receipt and sign it. Right? So there's 3 different levels here. Rav Ada Barava says if you gather 3 people, you can make an admission and they can write a receipt for your creditor. Rava says no, you can only gather them as judges, but then it works. And Mar Bar Ravashi says no way, it's got to be a formal court. It has to be an established court. Okay? Gemara clarifies the law on admission made in the presence of 2 witnesses. So now we're going to go back to the case of 2 instead of 3. Hodu b'mitaltale v'kanu ado. So the debtor admitted his obligation regarding stuff, movable objects, stuff, and he did a kinyan. So the debtor did a kinyan cloth saying, "I have Rabbi Tobin's television." Okay, this is Rabbi Tobin's television. He does a kinyan, acquiring the obligation to return or pay for it. The television. Okay, kotvin, the witnesses can write a note for that. Ve'im lav, but if he didn't do the kinyan, ein kotvin, they cannot write it. Okay? Second case, mekarka'e velo kana miyado, regarding land, real estate, no kinyan, what's the law? We're going to have an argument. Amemar said, the guy named Amemar said, ein kotvim, you may not write if there's no kinyan in a property sale. Marzutra Amar, but Marzutra Amar, kotvim. You do write a receipt. So actually in real estate, where I would think the difficulty of getting the receipt would be higher, you have to go to a higher level to prove it. In fact, Marzutra is making it lower. 2 witnesses without a kinyan can write a receipt for the sale of property. And hilchatat kotvim, and the halacha is that we do in fact allow that. Anyone got an idea why you might want to allow that with real estate and you won't allow it with a television or a diamond necklace or a painting?
Why would you allow it without a kinyan?
Right, that's the question. Why would you allow the sale of property without a kinyan to generate a receipt when you would not allow the sale of a diamond necklace without a kinyan to generate a receipt?
Could be Nishkash and no one's around.
What's that?
It could be in the middle of nowhere.
And how does that help you? It's out there in the
Doesn't
middle of
help you
nowhere.
Because the cloth is a cloth.
Maybe because it affects.
Property ownership is usually known within a community, whereas an individual, whereas like a painting that we're saying is in your house and hidden.
Good.
So it's the knowledge of the community versus.
So the property ownership is known, and the thing could be stashed away somewhere.
Could have been stolen.
Could have been stolen, could be stashed, could be an eBay item, yeah. Never know. Right? And the land is the land.
I was wondering if the idea of inheritance might have something to do with it also.
And there's inheritance rights here, yeah. That's interesting, although you can inherit stuff and you can inherit money as well, but landed inheritance is different.
Because it's fixed, it's not movable. It's not,
The most of the rabbinic system around this is going to make this about actually having possession of the item. And you acquire the land. Once you acquire the land, it is in your possession. wherever it is, because it's land, as opposed to the necklace, it's not in your possession when you acquire it. So the debtor may say, this is in fact Rabbi Tobin's diamond tennis bracelet that I have. So at the moment he admits that in front of witnesses, ownership of the bracelet has transferred to Rabbi Tobin, and there's a document to prove that. But possession of the bracelet has not. Right? So you're going to need a higher bar to prove that, because I've got to get that out of his possession. So before you generate a document that can do that, we're going to want to see a kinyan, or in some cases, 3 witnesses, or according to another person, a beit din of 3 judges.
Do you
to-
have to prove the ownership of that necklace, a bill of sale that you
And
bought it?
hamotzi mechavarav alav hu araya. Anytime you want to take something out of someone else's hand, it is upon you to bring the proof. I need to prove it's mine to get it out of his hands. As opposed to land, the moment I own it, it's out of his hands. Now he's just trespassing on my land.
But
Right?
you
If
have,
if he's living in a house and he sells me the land, it's my land, I've gained possession of it. He's trespassing
what about
if he
the,
doesn't leave.
what about the deed to the land? In other
That's
words,
the
the owner
receipt.
of the land has to have a deed. So how does he get
In
it?
the ancient world, you don't have deeds, but you can have a document of sale. It's slightly different. A deed is proof that it's your,
Right.
that you own the land. A document of sale is proof that you've transferred the land.
What if he transferred the land, but Ron stays in the house?
He's a trespasser.
Throw 'em out.
What if he owns the house?
He doesn't own the house. Oh, you mean he,
sold it.
oh, he only bought the
Right,
land
but
rights, but
not
I didn't
the-
buy
But
this.
the house, yeah.
You're a troublemaker.
Sorry.
All right. Let's move on. Gemara continues its discussion regarding the writing of a note of admission for movable objects. So we're going to kind of take a pass on the landed real estate thing, and we're going to go back to the diamond necklace. Okay? Ravina ikla le Damharia. So Ravina arrived in Damharia. Nobody knows where Damharia is. Amar le Rav Dimi bar Rav Huna mid Damharia le Ravina. And Rav Dimi, the son of Rav Huma from Damharia, said to Ravina, Mitaltale ve'itnehu benaihu. If one admits movable objects and they are in his possession, what's the law? So Ron's got the bracelet in his pocket, and he admits in front of witnesses, this is Rabbi Tobin's bracelet. Okay? Amar le. So Ravina says to Rav Dimi, in that case, ki dimikarka edamu. It's just like real estate, meaning the witnesses to the admission can draw up a document. So that's contrary to what we heard before. Okay, that's Ravina. So now, not surprisingly, we get a dissenting opinion. Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says, Kevan de mechasre guvaina lo. Since the objects lack collection, the note may not be written for them. In other words, like I said before, and if the thing's not moving over, if it hasn't transferred to the owner, you can't have a document regarding it, even if they're in the debtor's possession. Okay, so that's Rav Ashi. He doesn't think you can do that. And the Gemara is now going to discuss the idea of this note of admission, so we leave it at that. It seems like we leave it with Rav Ashi. You can't do this with metaltalin. You can do this with karka. You can't do this with movable stuff. You can do this with land. That's all. Now, the document that the witnesses write up. Let's say your witnesses aren't so bright. Okay, you have 2 witnesses and they're writing a document. Ideally, the document is going to say the following. On such a date, in such and such a place, such and such a person said to us, you shall be my, or said to us, name us, you shall be my witnesses for the purposes of admitting a debt regarding a bracelet between me and so, that in fact I owe that person this bracelet, it is his. Right? That would be an ironclad document. It's got all kinds of information in there. It's got the names of the witnesses. It's got the date. It's got the place that it happened. It's an admission from one party regarding a second party, and it explicitly names the admission. Okay? Beautiful. ironclad document. Now let's say that it's Swiss cheese, and there's a bunch of holes in here, and some of these things were not said. Right? Does the document hold up? Okay. Hahi odita, this document is called an odita, an acknowledgement. V'lo hava katuv ba, but it didn't have written in it the following words. Amar lana kitvu v'chitmu v'havuli. You, witnesses, shall write and sign and give it to my creditor. Right? So when you write a get, you say, when you do the appointment of the shaliach for the get, you say, and you shall give it to her, right? That kind of thing. You have to give something to someone for them to take possession of it if it's a movable object. So if the document that he wrote, this document of admission, didn't say, give this document to my creditor, or didn't say to the witnesses, write and sign such and such a document, then is it kosher or is it not kosher? Abaye v'Rava, da'amrei tarvayu. So supposedly we have contrary traditions between Abaye and Rava. However, in this case, they both say, Hainu de Reish Lakish. This is the teaching of Reish Lakish, Damar Reish Lakish, who said, Hazaka ein ha'edim chotmim ala shtar. It's presumable that the witnesses don't sign on a note, a document, ela imkein na'asu gadol, unless the person who they're writing regarding is an adult. This basically means witnesses don't sign documents without knowing that everything's kosher, right? Which means if they signed the document and it was from this guy, it meant they're supposed to give it to the other guy. It meant it was in this time and at this place, and it's kosher. Witnesses don't sign things just in a haphazard manner or in unenforceable circumstances. So you're putting a lot on the witnesses to know what the law is in that principle. So that's going to get questioned. Mat kifle Rav Papi ve'itema Rav Huna bereda Rav Yehoshua. So Rav Papi, some say it's Rav Huna, son of Rav Yehoshua, asked regarding that principle, mi'ika mide da'an and la yadinan. Is there really a law that we judges don't know? V'safre devei dina yade, and the scribes do know? So the question here is, the witnesses have signed. You're presuming the witnesses who signed know all of the legal requirements to make the document they're signing kosher. Are you really telling me that witnesses are fully capable of doing that without judges? That witnesses know all about all the intricacies and details of the document and the law when they sign it? Is that your claim? So, if that's the claim, then judges unfamiliar with the law, the witnesses have to be more familiar with the law. Are you saying the witnesses are more familiar with that? So it's back and forth. It's undermining the judges. She'elinhu, so they try and solve this problem. How do they do this? They ask, L'safri d'Abaye v'yade. They go to Abaye's court, and they go to the stenographers in the court, the people who are writing documents, not the judges. And they say, do you know these rules? Right? And they say v'yade, and they knew. So then they went l'safrei to Rava. They go to Rava's court and they ask the stenographers, do you always enforce the following rules? V'yade, and they knew. So knew, guess what? Professional witnesses actually do know the rules, and you can rely upon them. So they're able to do this. Right? It's interesting. The Gemara explores another case of a note of admission containing questionable language. And now instead of leaving something else, now it is actually written something that's suspect. Duchran kit game. This is a record of words. Right? V'chol lishane devei dina, and all the other terminology is common to the documents of a court. V'lo hava katav ba, but it did not have written in it, b'motav tlata havine v'chad litohi. It didn't say we are a Beit Din of three, and one is no longer alive, which is required when three judges have presided over a case and one dies before the proper documentation is drafted. Okay, so now you have a case where someone was in front of a court that was kosher. There were three judges. The ruling comes down and it is witnessed. Before the witnesses can write the document, judge number 3 dies. So they can't say when they write the document, here in the presence of a Beit Din in 3, we are writing. Right? Even though it's a kosher case. So they have to leave that piece out. Is the document kosher since it doesn't have the requirement that they're saying they were in front of a Beit Din of 3?
What about if one of the witnesses dies?
then he can't write.
I mean, he already wrote.
You don't, no. This is now they're writing. The question is when they write,
when
they
write.
leave out the idea there's a third judge because they can't say honestly when they write that there is a third judge. Right? If one of them has died by the time they're writing, then you don't have the witnesses you need.
You need another witness.
Correct. Or two witnesses to the fact that that witness witnessed before he died. But that would be really complex. Sava Ravina Lememar. Ravina is thought to have said regarding this, Hainu de Reish Lakish, this is again the ruling of Reish Lakish, and it is presumable that when people sign, they know what they're signing, and if they leave something out, it was for a good reason, and the document is still kosher. So I have this, for example, once I did a conversion on a Friday. Okay? And you might say, so, sounds nice. Make a Jew, have him enjoy Shabbat first, right? But there's a principle that you don't convene Beit Din on Yom Shishi. You don't have a Beit Din on Fridays. Why? Because the person takes the document from the Beit Din out and tries to enforce it, and it's like 2 hours before sundown, and anyone who's objecting to it can't get back to a Beit Din to object, because everyone's closed for Shabbos. Right? So a Beit Din can only be on a day when the next day is also available for a Beit Din. Okay? So I was told by a colleague, you really shouldn't be doing a conversion on a Saturday. And I said, why? And he gave the principle. And I said, I know that principle, but really? I mean, who's going to come and challenge the Gior? He said, so if he goes to an Orthodox Beit Din in the future, and he wants to use your document as evidence of his conversion, they're going to look and see the date as being a Beit Din sitting on Yom Shishi, and it's immediately going to make them think that it's an idiot who convened the Beit Din, because we don't do Beit Din on Shishi, and therefore it couldn't possibly be a kosher Beit Din, and it might not be a kosher document, and therefore he might not be Jewish, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Right?
So is it possible to have if you need to do it for whatever reason on Friday, but then have the Beit Din on Sunday?
No, the Beit Din has to be the day that it happens, because they sign that in front of us he was circumcised, in front of us he went into the mikveh. We saw it.
Okay.
That's what the Beit Din is signing. So, so it's very simply solved. In the document that, you have to fill in the date. So on the 6th of Sivan, that's a bad example because that's a Yom Tov. On the 6th of Elul, which is the 6th day of the week, I changed the language to say the 6th of Elul, even though it is the 6th day of the week. I put the word Lamrot Shehu Yom Shishi. So anybody reading the document is going to see that it's a kosher document. It happened at this time, place. Everyone's witnessing. All the good things happened. And that I knew enough to say, even though it's Yom Shishi, we did convene the Beit Din, right? Which would have the opposite effect. Because some very traditional person seeing that in the future is going to go, wow, this guy even knew the rules of Beit Din when he did this. And it would add credence to it. So ironically, doing it on a day that's not permitted, adding that word would make it look like I'm more traditional.
Okay, and that would, so let's say they did go before an Orthodox rabbi, would that still be considered kosher?
Once they figured out it was me, they're going to say no.
Of course not. But if they know,
It depends if they can figure out it's me.
in the United States, yes.
I mean, are they going to just take the document?
You do it.
Because who do they know who Reuven ben Avraham is? How many Reuven ben Avraham is going to be? How Reuven ben Avraham? What can you do?
I have a question about the debtor and creditor. It doesn't seem like they sign anything. We're used to people signing the debtor and